Hi everybody. Today we will continue with the sample problems. But before we move on to example 4, let me make a quick note about example 3. So in example 3, we solved the expansion of steam through a turbine. In letter A, we use the steam table, and in letter B, we use the Molly diagram. So I want to make comments on the Molly diagram. As you can see on the diagram, the inlet point is here. And then after assuming isentropic expansion, since the Molly diagram is enthalpy versus entropy, a graph of enthalpy versus entropy, obviously if it's an isentropic expansion, then from the initial state, I mean the inlet state, um, the direction of the process on this diagram is a vertical line, right? So I mentioned that last meeting. However, so this point right here is the isentropic expansion, and then we read the values from the graph. However, since efficiency is given, so we calculate for the actual expansion using the efficiency. What do you notice? The actual process does not really go in a vertical line, but rather goes slanting to the right. Okay, from initial from the inlet to the outlet, the line here slants towards the right. And why is that? Because um on the x-axis, let me zoom in. On the x-axis, this is the entropy. And for real processes, okay, so the not isentropic, so we're talking about the real irreversible process. What is entropy? Entropy is increasing, entropy is greater than zero. That's why the outlet, okay, the outlet has a higher entropy than the inlet. So let me zoom out again so you can see this one, the outlet has a higher entropy than the inlet. So as it moves from the inlet to the outlet, um, on the diagram, the process approaches a higher entropy, so it slants to the right, wherein the right has a higher entropy, right? So that value is higher than this one. All right, so I hope that's clear. So that is for an irreversible process, but for a reversible process, it will go to to a vertical line, or the process follows a vertical line. Now we move on to example 4. In example 4, a stream of ethylene gas at 300 degrees Celsius and 45 bars is expanded adiabatically in a turbine to 2 bars. So this is still expansion process. Calculate the isentropic work produced. Okay, so there's work produced in the expansion. Um, find the proper, so there are two ways that we can calculate for the isentropic work. By first letter A, assuming an ideal gas, and letter B, by using appropriate generalized correlations. Okay, so let's draw the problem first. By the way, do you notice that um I'm sharing the entire screen? That's because this is for convenience, because later on, as you can see, we will shift from whiteboard to Excel, the entire solution for this problem. So that's for convenience. I don't have to reshare and reshare my screen. So let's write the given. We're given an expander. It's not specified that yeah, it's specified that it's a turbine here. Okay, so we're given a turbine. The inlet, of course, we're given ethylene as the gas. The in the inlet, okay, the temperature is 300 degrees Celsius, or 573.15 Kelvin. The outlet, we don't know. Okay, we don't know, but um for the inlet pressure, it's 45 bars. For the outlet, it's given 2 bars. Okay, So required is the isentropic work. So that's a work shaft. If it's isentropic, we can use the convention that there's a parenthesis sub S, so that refers to isentropic work. And then assuming ideal gas, and then using generalized correlations. Right. So remember what is the equation for working equation for turbines. So here is the working equation for turbine. It's work shaft equal to the mass flow rate. Okay. Um, so anyway, this is, since no mass flow rate was given, so we use this. Work shaft is just delta H. Okay. So let's write that. That's our working equation. So work shaft for turbine. Okay, work shaft is just delta H. So if it's isentropic, then we have to get the isentropic delta H, right? So this one. Okay. What's the first thing that we need to do? Well, for letter A, assuming ideal gas. Okay, let me write letter E right here. Um, what is our working equation? Okay, our working equation. Well, in general, this is our working equation from the yeah, from lecture 6. This is from lecture 6. So, we use, so originally we do the CPDT, right? CPDT, CPIGDT, okay? Uh, from T1 to T2 plus H2R residual minus H1R. But since T2 is unknown, it's better if we use the mean heat capacity this time. Okay, so mean heat capacity H, um, then T2 minus T1, okay, uh, plus, so this is our working equation as well. Since this is an ideal gas, so for an ideal gas, there's no residual, okay, because it's an ideal gas, okay, and therefore delta H is just Cp mean heat capacity times T2 minus T1, right? Okay, so that's our, oops, H T2 minus T1. How about for delta S? Okay, the long equation is we have the S2R and R1, but since this is an ideal gas, okay, let's go directly to the, so it's the mean heat capacity for isentropic calculation, and then ln T2 minus T1 minus R ln P2 minus P1. Okay, so that is the equation. Uh, so if it's an actual gas, we have S2R minus S1R, but since this is an ideal gas, there's no residual, so we're left with up to here. Okay. Now, for an isentropic process, right, the reason why we're also interested in delta S, although in our working equation, it's only uh, delta H, wherein we can solve the work shaft, we're also interested in delta S because this is an isentropic process. And that would give us a clue on how to solve for the final temperature, right? And then we need a final temperature to be able to solve the outlet condition, or yeah, the outlet conditions. So since delta S is zero, what happens to this equation? CPIG over R. So let's transfer uh one term on one hand on the other side of the equation. Okay, is ln P2 over P1, right? P2 and P1 are known, so let's substitute that. So P2 is 2, P1 is 45, and if we evaluate the ln of that, the ratio, it's this value, okay? And therefore, we're interested in T2, let's isolate T2 on one side of the equation, ln T2 is negative 3.1135 divided by Cp over R over R, uh, and then we add ln of T1, which is the initial temperature is 573.15. Okay? So basically, we just separated the ln T2 and ln T1. T1 is 570.15. And then exponentiating both sides, we get, so exponentiating both sides, 335 Cp Ig over R. So this is over R plus, so evaluating that, it's 6.3511. Okay. So this equation, uh, this is the equation that we will be using to iterate for T2. Okay. So how do we iterate for T2? So you have to combine this equation for T2 with um the formula for the mean heat capacity, which is from the previous lecture. Let me copy paste that. Okay, which is this one. Okay. But there are two ways that we can do this, since this is if it's a homework, you can use a spreadsheet like this, but I'll also teach you how to do this using the your calculator. Okay, so this is the long version without the tau. I would use this one. I won't use the version with the tau. Okay. I won't use this version. I would use this long version. So first, let me show you how to do it via the spreadsheet. Okay, so via spreadsheet, this is one of the calculators that um, the book has provided. So basically, um, for this is unknown. So this is T2, which is the unknown. So here it's T naught and T. So T corresponds to T2, T naught corresponds to T1 in our problem. Um, I calculated basically, so in this calculator, we can, it automatically calculates the MCPS, which is this value, MCPS, that one, MCPS uh, over R. Okay. So to get the CP, you multiply the MCPS with 8.314. And then this column is actually this equation, okay? This exponent of this quantity here. So as you can see, right? Can you see it? Okay, so this is exactly, so let me zoom in. Uh, Unfortunately, I can't zoom in the formula box. So this equation, I typed it here. So 3.1135 divided by the CP, the MCPS. So CP over R is MCPS plus 6.3511. Okay, and then in the next iteration, so this is the second iteration, the temperature 2 would assume the value of the T from the last iteration. So this cell right here equals this one, right? And then I just need to drag the formula until the temperature does not change anymore. So it means we have reached convergence. Okay, so as you can see, the temperatures do not change anymore, and therefore, this is our temperature right here. Okay. Now, how do you do this using your calculator? I'll show you. So remember how we use ends to iterate? That's the same method. So we first initialize the value. I just choose randomly 600 uh, because it's near 573. But later on, if it's an expansion, uh, the temperature goes lower. Okay, so it's safer to assume actually a smaller initial value like 500. Let's assume 500. Okay, so that's the initialization. So what you will do is input this equation in the calculator. And this is exactly this um, formula. So do you recognize that? This is negative zero point 0.3. Let's put the negative sign. Okay. Plus 6.3511. And what's this? This entire wrong equation in the denominator. That's the equation for CP over R, which is this one. This is CP over R. So A plus quantity B T naught. So basically, I inputted everything, and wherever T appears, or in our case T2, so wherever this formula appears or variable appears, I replace it with ans. This one, ans. Okay? And then after that, you simply just enter and enter over and over again. So you enter. Oh, that's not working. Until the value, see, it's not changing anymore. Well, that's how you iterate. So the value is 370 point, T2 is 370.76. So from iteration, T2 is, let's round off, 370.8 Kelvin. Okay? Uh, it's still long. The solution is still long. We're only in getting T2. So uh, the next step is to solve for MCPH. Okay? Because uh, we're trying to solve for delta H. So we find the equation. What equation can we use to solve for delta H? Okay, so here This is the equation. This one. And now that we have T2, it will not be a problem. However, we don't know CPH, the mean heat capacity for H calculations. So it's different. Okay. But you will see later that the difference is insignificant. So what you can do if this is a homework, you can use the calculator by the book. Okay, so I simply inputted also by the way, I forgot to mention these coefficients are from the appendix. Okay, just like the MCPS. Okay, so these are from the appendix for ethylene. Okay, so this is MCPS now going to this MCPH. So these are the same uh, coefficients. Now, um, since we know already that the temperature is C70.8, this is the temperature 2 and temperature initial or inlet is 573, you can directly input that. And what can you see here? It we're able to calculate CP. And this calculator automatically calculates for delta H, ideal gas. Okay, and this is what we need because in letter A, delta H, the assumption is it's in a ideal gas. Okay, so let's write that. By the way, what if you don't have an access to Excel? How do you solve for CP and MCP, that the H? So you use this long equation, okay, this one. The coefficients, you solve it manually. You input the T that we gained from the previous iteration here. Okay. So this calculator just automatically does that. Let's write the CPH, CPIGH is, that's the value, 60.06 joules per mole Kelvin. And then we use that to calculate for delta H S, which is CPIGH, oops, multiplied by T2 minus T1, so that is 60.06 times T2, 370.8 minus T1. Okay? What we will get is a value equal to negative 12. So this one, negative 12,154 joules per mole. Okay, so this is the answer for letter A. Oops. Huh? What's happening? Hmm, what's happened? Okay, that's weird. Okay. Okay. Uh, let's resume. This is the final answer. We box that for letter A. Let's move on to letter B. In letter B, it's not an ideal gas anymore, so we have to um, get the properties using an appropriate generalized correlation. So what we can do first is to get the critical properties. Critical properties of ethylene. So this is from the appendix TCPC, okay, and the eccentric factor. So we calculate for the reduced temperature at initial state. So at initial state, the temperature is 573 or 0.15 divided by the critical temperature. So that's 2.03. So for here, it's 45 bars divided by 50.4, and that's 0.893. And then based on this, we can try to check figure 13.13. Okay, let me see if I have a copy here. So no. Okay, let me open the reference. This is figure 3.13. Now we try to plot our uh, TR and PR. Okay, so TR is so TR is 2.03, PR is 0.893. So TR is somewhere here, and then PR is somewhere here. It's well within the uh, region wherein it's safe to assume that the virial coefficient correlation has a good accuracy. Okay, so if it's within this dashed region, okay, then it means we can use the virial coefficient, which is easy. Okay, so we can use that. Um, so how do we solve for the virial? Um, Here. So do you remember that one? Okay. And for S, this one. Now, I will leave it up to you to solve it manually, but I would use this calculator to check my answer. Okay, so I inputted the inlet conditions and the critical properties, and then this calculator gave me the residual property. Okay, so let's write the answers in our whiteboard. For HR1, let's begin with H1R over RTC. It's negative 0.234. For S1R over RTC over R only, it's negative 0.097. So for SR, it uses a different calculator, this one. Okay. So S residual over R is 0.0970. Okay. Now we calculate for the H1 R and S1 R by multiplying with the denominator from the other side of the equation. What you will get are these values. Negative 549 joules per mole. And then for S1 R, yeah, it's negative 0.806 joules per mole Kelvin. So this is okay. This is available in the calculator. Okay. Now, the reason that we did that is because this is our working equation. So let me copy paste these equations below. Okay. Okay, fixing that. This is our working equation. So this should come first. Okay, so this should come first. And here, this is not an ideal gas, so we, oops, I just want to select it. Let me fix it first. I'll pause the video. Alright, so this is our working equation, except for this one, it's not part of it. Okay, for H and S. So we now have the H1 residual and the S1 residual. The next thing, so we have no problems with the first part. This is from letter A, okay? So this is from letter A. What we need is H2 residual. Okay. Uh, to get H2 residual, it's quite a bit challenging because you will first assume a value for S2 residual since we don't know the temperature of S at the outlet. But from letter A, in using ideal conditions, T2 is 370.8 Kelvin. But this is assuming ideal conditions. It would be different if the conditions are actual. But this is a good start. So initial assumption to get S2. Okay? So let's try to calculate S2 using this initial condition. Um, we use this. Okay? So here, the outlet initial, this is just a guess, no? This is not the actual temperature, T2. So guess temperature, and this is our pressure at the outlet. We have an initial S2. Okay, S2R. S2R initial. So let's label that. So from the calculator, right here, it's negative 0.115 joules per mole Kelvin. Okay, now what do we do next? So we use, since this is an isentropic, okay, isentropic expansion, we need delta S to find T2. So now we have, we S1, we already obtained that here, S1R, and S2, we have an initial guess. What's missing from this equation? Uh, T2 and CP. So can you guess what we will do next? We will iterate again. Okay, we will iterate again. So let's set up the equation for iteration. So isentropic expansion delta S is 0. Therefore, our equation becomes CPIGS ln T2 over T1 573.15 by minus 8 point. So this is R distributed the R ln P2 over P1. So that's 2 over 45. So minus our S2R point. So in the book, they use so let's round up to 6, but actually in the calculator it's 0.115. Anyway, let's use that the same as the book, plus so this is should be negative the minus S1R, but S1R is negative, so that becomes a positive value. Okay, so this is H2R plus H2R, but this is negative. Oh, you get that. Now we simplify the right-hand side of the equation and transfer CP on the other side. Okay, so let's do that. ln T2 over 573.15 equal to negative 26 over CP IGS. Okay, now let's exponentiate both sides of the equation. You will get T2 exponent negative 26.576 CPIGS plus 6.3511. Okay? So this is the ln of 573.15. So that gives 6.35511. Okay. Now, this is the working equation for the iteration. What do you need to do? You insert the formula for CPS, this one, okay, using the coefficients. You insert that into this equation. So if you're going to use your calculator, again, iterating would mean that you initialize the value and you replace T2 with ANS. Okay, so please do that. But using the Excel sheet, this is what you will get. So careful. In the previous iteration, this is CP over R. So let me show you the formula. Previous iteration, the denominator here is CP over R. But after deriving, right now our denominator is CP over R. We already distributed R on both sides of the equation. So doing that and iterating the actual temperature, okay, without assuming ideal gas, is 365.8. So from iteration, T2 is 365.8 Kelvin. Okay, now the question is, do we resolve S2R? Yes, because our initial S2R is just uh a guess, right? We use the temperature 370 for the initial R. So we resolve S2R using the new temperature. S2R using the new temperature, new T2. So I will use the calculator again. So now the temperature is 365 instead of 370. What is S2R? It's negative 0.1189, or yeah, 0.11. So in the book they rounded off to negative 0.1120. All right. Not 120. Negative that one. Negative 0.120 joules per mole Kelvin. So does it make sense to recalculate? Okay, to recalculate everything based on this S2R. So that means we go back to this equation and derive another equation for iteration. It does not anymore make sense because the value is closed. So we assume that That's fine. We can proceed. Okay. So what's next? Now that we have T2, we solve for HR. Yeah, H2R using the virial coefficient equation. Okay? This one, the virial coefficient. So I let you do that manually. So I'm using the calculator. Now 365, that's the temperature 2 for letter B. And now we have the values for H over RTC and HR. So I want to write it so you will see it. H2 over R would give you negative 0.0262 0. So the H2R is negative 61.0 joules per mole. Okay? Now what's next? Now we need to calculate for delta HS. And what's our working equation? This is our working equation. This one. Okay? For letter B, we have H2R and H1R. So let's do that. Ah, but first we need to calculate CPIG for H. Okay? And to do that, we simply input into the equation for MCPH. Okay, this is the equation. Using T2, 365 instead of 370. Okay, so I hope that's clear. In letter B, that T2 is 365. In letter A, when we assume ideal gas conditions, the T2 is 370, but this is for the actual. So input that into this equation, what you will get is this CP. Okay? You write that CP 59.84, oops, joules per mole Kelvin. And now we can solve for delta HS. That's H1R minus H2R. Okay. Substituting the values. Let's substitute. CP is 659.84 times T2, 365.8 minus T1, 573.15 Kelvin, plus our H1R is 61, is negative 61, minus H2, which is, where is H2? Mm-hmm. Okay, let me double check that. Okay. H1 is here, negative 549. I think there's a mistake in the signs. It should be negative and that should be positive. Mm-hmm. Ah, okay. I made a mistake here. Let me. Where is our? Hmm. Okay. So plus H2R minus H1R. Okay. Okay. So this is the formula. Plus H2R. Uh, H1 is negative. So where is that? Where is the mistake? This one. Okay. This should be 2 and this should be 1. So that's correct. But 51 minus 549. Okay. So the value is, after evaluating, what you will get is, oops, this should be positive and this should be negative. Positive H, let me correct this. It should be negative. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Final value is negative 11,920 joules per mole, which is the delta HS. Delta H isentropic, which is equal to work shaft. Okay, let me box that and let me do that as well. For letter A is equal to work shaft. Okay, so I hope that is clear. It's a long problem because we have many calculators and long equations. Okay, so please practice solving for MCPH, MCPS, and also for using the virial coefficient correlation for H and SR, HR and SR. That ends example 4, and I'll see you next video.